right? If you want funny to be your bonus, you have to have a funny every chapter. Readers don't like bait and switch. They don't like a funny first chapter that sort of dies in the middle and then comes back to being funny at the end. You've got to make the funny ever present. All right, so next up we have Kim. So here's the thought for today, and I want to do this in part to recognize Kim's accomplishments. People tend to try to learn from famous authors, and it's only natural, right? This guy succeeded, right? Brandon Sanderson has a YouTube channel. I'm going to watch that because he's making millions of bucks. That's great. But I think it is equally, if not more helpful, to talk to an author before they become famous, to figure out how their process is working, and then to share that so that we can both encourage and improve. So I wanted Kim to talk a little bit about where she's at with this project, and then start off with how long ago it started.
So this project is about 1.5 years in the making right now. And I'm completely done with the messy first draft, as I like to call it. And now I'm trying to make it look like I knew what I was doing all along. So now I'm in that phase, which is surprisingly almost harder than the messy first draft part. But so now I'm trying to make a really good cohesive outline that'll kind of help me with all of that. And I feel like right now that's kind of my biggest struggle is making a really good, strong outline for everything and what that looks like. Because this is my first novel, so I'm kind of learning this all as I go. And I'm just trying to make this second draft a little bit easier, and it's a doozy. So.
Okay. First of all, thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about some tools in a second. So, I mean, this novel is really amazing. I want to go through a couple tools to give some background. And then Kim submitted her first chapter today. So I'm going to ask Cece to retell it so that we can make sure all of the parts are there. And then we're going to discuss it in a little more detail. So, I don't know. First off, let's hear your MCS. We'll share it with everyone, and that way they can get a grounding in this, what the story is.
Okay. So once upon a time, Ammit was the devourer in the Egyptian underworld. But now that she's a myth, she must reside in the realm, which is the spiritual afterlife for all entities now considered a myth. It wouldn't be so bad if she had some sort of support structure, but the gods do little to make her feel accepted due to their long-standing prejudice against demons. So she's lonely and feels like she has no purpose. So at her lowest, she meets this mysterious goddess Lamashtu, who claims that she can help Ammit find purpose if she joins her cause. And desperate, Ammit does join the cause, or joins Lamashtu's side. It starts off well enough. She makes some demon friends, and she learns that she is way more powerful than the gods have led her to believe. She learns that her soul devouring abilities don't just work on mortals, but they work on gods too. Unfortunately, she doesn't realize that Lamashtu only wanted to exploit this newfound power until it is way too late. So now she is desperate to prove to the realm, and more importantly to herself, that she is not a monster, and works to undo the chaos that she helped cause. Using her voice rather than her destructive power, she convinces the demons and the gods to join together to fight against Lamashtu's tyrannical rule. The fight is successful, and she is defeated, showing that gods and demons can live together in this afterlife peacefully. But more importantly, Ammit discovers her self-worth and her purpose.
Wonderful, right? 95 seconds. So you get fireworks. Let's add, so tomorrow's blog is going to be about the stages of MCS development. There are 4 stages, if I remember them: completeness, conciseness, stability, and drama. So Kim's is pretty far along. We could go through the tests, right? The test for completeness is if we have a question, some kind of hole, something that's missing in the story. So Cece, can you think of any questions?
No, it was pretty concise to me. I don't know if I don't personally have a question.
Yeah, I don't have a question either. So nice and complete. It's a story. It fits into a story-shaped box. Is it concise? Yes, it fit into around 90 seconds. Is it stable? It seems pretty stable. And then drama, it's a little bit hard to get drama here, but it's getting there, right? So that's the last little piece you have to work on. So how long did it take you for it to reach this form?
I feel like I just nailed it today. So like a year.
Well, at least you nailed it. All right, so now we have to nail it next time. But you've been nailing it pretty consistently, so I think you're underestimating yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so what does she have, right? This story, this 90-second story told aloud, is her novel. It just isn't written yet. Now, she has been writing it. Done with her first draft, now she's revising, working on her second draft. All she has to do is to put into words the story she just told us. Now, it's easier, of course, said than done, but still, that's our goal. So think about how easy that task is in some sense, to just put that story into words. And then the second part of the challenge is what she mentioned. It's to divide this into chapters, right? You can't sell a 90-second audio tape. You can sell a 100,000 word novel. So that's the other part of it. We have to expand it. So that's what we want to talk about next. All right. There's another tool we have called value triangle. So MCS is your story. It's what your story is. Value triangle is about your story. It's what your story delivers to the reader. And we call it value triangle because it's value, A, and B, triangle, because it has 3 elements. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the MCS together with the value triangle to help Kim plot out the chapters. Not so much that she hasn't done this already. For her, it's more of a confirmatory exercise to make sure that each chapter is accomplishing its goals. And I'll throw in another pitch. We teach a workshop on how to do this. It's called Maintaining Narrative Momentum, and our next one will be on December 13th. So let's go over the value triangle just to share with yourself, right, to bring it to consciousness so that we can look at your first chapter from that perspective. So the 3 elements are main character, plot genre, and then the third element is bonus. So tell us a little bit about your main character and what makes them resonant with the audience.
So my main character kind of lands in that reluctant hero category, just because for a lot of the time she doesn't even realize like what her abilities or powers are, and then when she does realize what they are, it's this push and pull of, well, is what I can do, does that make me a monster or am I not a monster? So I feel like, yeah, it's that just that reluctant, or I don't know what the other word would be, but yeah, the reluctant hero that has the power to change, but has to kind of get over her own internal conflict in order to do that, to help the realm. So that's kind of her, Ammit's position.
Good. So let's try this exercise. Can you describe Ammit in a sentence? Actually, let's hold off on that because that's part of the retelling exercise. All right, let's talk about genre. What kind of story is this?
It's a fantasy for sure, and then it's falls into kind of the political awakening realm, maybe. And then mythic fiction too, I guess, if like it has like, it's not really a mythology retelling, but it features all the characters of mythology.
Cece, would you add anything to that? Upon hearing the MCS, what kind of genre do you think this would be?
I think it's a fantasy, and I don't know if this is necessarily a genre, but it is like a hero's journey in a way.
Good. And a little bit of a political thriller too, because there's some spy stuff and some action going on as well. So the point of that part of the value triangle is to help you both direct your marketing and then make sure you're delivering on that promise. A story about dragons should have a dragon somehow in every chapter. For Kim, there has to be some kind of political intrigue, some fantasy world building, something like that to deliver that value in every chapter. And then finally, what's the bonus? Cece,
The
what do you think
humor.
we're gonna get? Sorry, that's okay. It's funny. This is a very funny story. And it's kind of interesting that these dark political tone about oppression, etc., is thrown into the mix with stuff that's really funny. That's the point of a value triangle, is to put all these pieces together so they make a winning combination. So the next step is to produce what we call the continuity and value delivery spreadsheet, which is Bardsy's penultimate tool. And the idea is you want to break your work down into chapters. So remember, a chapter has to be both satisfying and leave you wanting more. In other words, it has to build to some kind of peak and resolution. And at the same time, we want to make sure that all three of these value elements are in every one of Kim's chapters. We learn something about Ammit, our relationship with her grows and deepens. We see the plot develop along this fantasy political line. And then we are funny, right? If you want funny to be your bonus, you have to have a funny in every chapter. Readers don't like bait and switch. They don't like a funny first chapter that sort of dies in the middle and then comes back to being funny at the end. You've got to make the funny ever present. All right. So after we sort of stabilize the first chapter, the next step is to work on this spreadsheet. Now, I know as writers, we don't like spreadsheets necessarily. We're not accountants, so some of us are. So you can use Post-its or index cards, whatever you want. I recommend spreadsheets because it's a lot easier to move things around, at least on the computer. But 3 columns: character, plot, genre, and bonus. And you're going to go through and make sure each chapter has something in that cell. And that something shouldn't be too long either. Just enough, about a sentence, no more. What's the main plot point of this chapter? What's the focus? What's the one big thing we learned about the character? What's the funny scene? And that's it. The tendency that we've noticed is that people tend to overwrite this. They put too much stuff in. So this is where you're at, Kim. We're going to work on the first chapter, and then we're going to work on this setting up the rest of the chapters, right? Most of your job is done because the first draft is there. So now it's a matter of smoothing things out, making sure there's continuity, and then finally evening out the value, right? There's a lot of value in here. I know that. But if, let's say, chapter 22 isn't very funny, just pulling an example out. That means you have to take stuff from chapter 19, move it to chapter 22, just so the funny is going to be there. If you had a different bonus, you wouldn't worry about the funny. We'd worry about something else. All right, so the point of today is to test Kim's first chapter. So we're going to ask Cece to do the retelling test, which is very simple. We're just going to ask her to retell the chapter in her own words and then see if it does a good job setting up all the elements of the story. So whenever you're ready, Cece.
Okay. We are introduced to our main character, Ammit. Ammit is a demon amongst gods within this realm where gods and demons have been sent. They are different. We also are introduced to the world where there are various gods from different mythologies, so Egyptian, Norse, of that nature. We meet Ammit at a somewhat of a group counseling session with other gods. And there we learn that she feels she has no purpose. She was the devourer of souls. And with that power in the Egyptian world, Egyptian underworld, she was the bringer of justice. And without that power and without purpose, she just doesn't really know who she is anymore and what she should do within this new realm. We also learn that because she is a demon amongst gods, that the gods do not respect her and look down on her for being a demon, which she struggles with a lot because she believes when she had power, she could stand amongst the gods and had a purpose. She is reminded that everyone else within the group is somewhat finding their way and she is not. So she leaves the meeting dejected and not feeling great, which is usually how she leaves those meetings. And upon leaving, she encounters this goddess named Lamashtu. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but Lamashtu, who basically says things along the lines of she deserves to be treated better, and perhaps demons should be treated better by gods in general. Wary and unconvinced of that narrative, Ammit retreats, and Lamashtu also reminds her that she's far more powerful than she believes. But again, she is not bought into this theory or, I guess, narrative, and she rejects the idea and turns away from the goddess.
Wow. All right, I'm going to try confetti. That was perfect. Let me say one. First of all, Cece is a talented and experienced storyteller, so it's going to sound great. And part of this is her, and this didn't happen this time, but people can often embellish things, and that's something you have to pay attention to. The main lesson to learn about this retelling exercise is that this is not a test of Cece. This is a test of Kim. Did Kim tell her story effectively in the first chapter? So we have a whole list of things that a first chapter needs to accomplish, but I wanted to get an overall impression first. Kim, are you happy with Cece's retelling? What do you think is missing, or what would you have liked her to have said differently?
I am very happy with that retelling.
Good.
I worked so long on this dang chapter so that I was like, I'm just happy to know that it paid off. So, yeah.
Good. Excellent. All right. Happiness is wonderful, but we can't be too happy just yet. Otherwise, we wouldn't have motivation to revise. So let me ask a couple standard questions from our list. I think the character is pretty well established. The world is established. I'm not going to talk about that. What's the inciting incident, Cece?
My understanding is the inciting incident is when she meets Lamashtu for the first time, which introduces the idea that she is possibly more powerful than she believes.
What's the choice that Ammit makes? What gives her agency in the meeting with Lamashtu?
I would almost suggest there is not necessarily enough of a choice for because she is cornered in that way. And when she does retreat, I believe, if I recall correctly, Lamashtu just disappears.
Good. Right? So that's one, not a big issue, but it's a niggling issue. It could be a little bit more engaging, at least at that level. First part, very engaging. The meeting with Lamashtu, not quite so much. And it's important. We are observing, and this is sort of tending into comments, so I don't want to steal your thunder, Cece, but we're moving from observation into vicarious experience. And the question is, can you do better at meeting that goal? And here's the second question. What do you think is going to happen in chapter 2? And for the rest of the book?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that Lamashtu will be a pretty big figure within her story. I know there's a resistance maybe at this time, but I think that we're going to get a little bit more of her world within the second chapter, and Lamashtu will have, an appearance, and she might change her mind.
Good. Wonderful. I can't really think of anything else to ask. I mean, there's a whole battery of questions you could ask about a retelling, but I think that covers everything that's needed for this piece. So, Cece, if you would you lead comments? Any other the other comments you have to offer on Kim's chapter?
Yeah, I mean, I would say overall my comments are fairly pretty positive. When I first started reading this manuscript, I was like dropped into the middle of the book. So this is my first time being able to read the first chapter, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt as though the creativity of like weaving in all of these gods in the same place is just like very unique. And there is that humor. I highlighted a couple of lines that made me laugh. So I think in terms of the value triangle, you're hitting that humor within this chapter. I also appreciated that we met Lamashtu in this chapter. I just feel as though, knowing what I've read other places, like it is important that she's introduced right away. So I don't know if that was a revision or not, but I really enjoyed the pace of the chapter and how quickly we got there. My only two questions, and they were really minor, so like I had to go back and like find things. I wanted, and this could be maybe expand later, but I wanted to get a better understanding of like, okay, the gods are here, humans aren't, or mortals aren't worshiping them anymore, but like, how did they get there? Like more in depth, like give me a little bit more meat. And if you're, and then just in terms of the length, I thought if you wanted to tighten the chapter, and again, this is like a small revision, if you wanted to tighten it, I did feel as though the conflict with Ammit and the gods, you could scale back a little, because the same message was repeated enough that if you wanted to get to Lamashtu even quicker, you could take out some of it. And but again, I really enjoyed it. I think there was like one line about Atlantis, and it made me that one really made me giggle. So
good. Thank you, Cece. I mean, it's a fun chapter with sort of dark overtones. So let's list the good things. Very relatable. This is what is astonishing about a fantasy. This is pure fantasy. Babylonian gods in a separate world that is still relatable. Why? Because it is framed as an AA meeting. And we know what AA meetings are like. It's a trope. But she uses that trope effectively. Relatable and yet new. I think Ammit is introduced really well, with one exception. We have no idea what she looks like. And I know it's important because part of her, first of all, it's just good to have a sense of what someone looks like. in this case, it's surreal, fantastical. But more importantly, it's because part of her powers sort of, I want to say, stem from the way she looks. So all the other, what's interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, but all the other gods, ex-gods, are described, and Ammit is the only one who isn't described. But just a teeny little bit, I think, would help. Very funny, right? And yet, the funny related to the theme. This is, let's step back. Kim has a first draft. She's been working on this a while. So the point of what she's doing now is to tune that first draft to increase reader satisfaction by making it more coherent. And in this case, the first chapter has to do the heavy lifting by showing the reader what's on offer. And what's on offer is a reluctant hero who's fighting political oppression and trying to find meaning for herself. And the nice thing about it is that the humor underlines the theme as opposed to working against it. Right? They make fun of her for being useless and a demon, not for something else. And they show their privilege in a sense by making fun of her. All good. So, and let's get what Cece said. 2 good points here. A little, I don't know if I think readers will be interested in this. I don't know that they need to know it in the first chapter, but a little bit more about how the realm was created. Maybe not. The second thing is a little bit of repetition early on. Why is that important? Because you have to spend your words wisely, especially in a first chapter. So it may, try spending more of it on Lamashtu. As you know, I like to count things. 85% of the chapter was done before Lamashtu showed up. Probably too late, because we don't get a sense of who Lamashtu, we do get a sense of it, but I think we could use more. Who this evil being is. And obviously she's disguising her evil, so we need that on 2 levels. Why did she happen to show up at this moment? She knows Ammit is weak. That could be brought a little bit more to the surface. And then a little bit more about the choice, right? In this chapter, Ammit's rejecting her, and she sort of says, I'll get you next time, twirling a mustache, perhaps. I don't know if she has a mustache. But that can be lengthened, right? Ammit has to have a real struggle here. And I don't know that Lamashtu's offer is all that enticing. You could make it more enticing, right? You want power, here's power. This is the aftermath of I'll call it an AA meeting. Lamashtu is the dude in the parking lot giving people alcohol and drugs. So you've got that analogy going. You can pull it through to this and make Lamashtu's offer a little bit more enticing, and therefore Ammit has to struggle a little bit more to reject it, while leaving the door open to the future. But overall, this is just a great chapter. It's a great introduction to a book. And a great introduction is the most important thing you can do in terms of selling. All right. So thoughts, Kim?
Not really. That was so helpful. Thank you so much. I do have questions though. Just a quick question on the value continent, like the outline that you read, like the 3-column outline. So for like the character, plot, and bonus, you would have a sentence in each of those columns for every chapter. Is okay.
Yes, you should be
Okay.
able to. The exercise or the goal is to wholly capture the chapter in those, there you go, 3 sentences.
Okay.
So, and you don't even need a full sentence for humor. You just need the name of the scene. And
Okay.
for plot, you do need a sentence, maybe a sentence and a half. And for character, maybe less than a sentence. And try to
Okay.
keep them short and declarative.
Okay.
I know we want to write long sentences, but that doesn't help you. The shorter they are, the easier it'll be for your brain to accommodate them and move them around and think
Okay.
about them.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'll be super helpful. Thank you. But yeah, that's like I said, I was working on this chapter for a stupid long time, so I'm really happy it landed because I can't even imagine like a complete rewrite at this point. So
How long is a stupid long time?
like a week and a half.
Oh, that's not a stupid long time. That's
No,
just
but
a
like
reasonably long time.
I feel like it's a long time for 3,000 words. So
Oh, but look at what you've accomplished. This is a very, very good first chapter. I think one tweak and one little tweak, and I think you're done. So you're gonna. So I mean, I'm gonna encourage you, and this is gonna make your writing a lot more efficient and produce a much better product. Work on that continuity and value delivery spreadsheet. I mean, most of it's going to be pulling from your first draft, pulling what you already have from your first draft into the sheet so that you can see it and then reorganize it in one swoop instead of trying to sort of remember to move things around and put things back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I think that's it for today.
Bardsy delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity. Bardsy Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback. And our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at Bardsy.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite Membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bardsy, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and, most importantly, your readers.